Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX. I am Shweta Kothari. In less than 84 days, the UK will end its 4-decade-long membership of the EU on March 29, 2019. But as the country's deadline for the departure comes closer, it's a post-Brexit plan that remains uncertain. Prime Minister Theresa May continues to struggle while trying to overcome the deep opposition to her proposed Brexit plan. The uncertainty is also going to take a hit on the education sector. The Russell Group, comprising of most select universities of the UK, revealed that the number of EU students enrolling in their institution has fallen for the first time in last 5 years. Universities face the threat of going bust in the wake of no-deal Brexit, with an imminent danger of loss of funding. How is the Brexit going to affect the educational institutions in the UK and the future of prospective students? All that and more will be discussed in this panel today. We have with us economist Jagdish Shettigar, the Vice-Chancellor of Essex University, Professor Anthony Froster. Also joining me on the broadcast at this point, Vanessa Potter, she's the VP in Essex University. And finally, Mr. Naveen Chopra of the Chopras, the Education Consulting Group. Appreciate you all for joining us today on the broadcast. Let me first begin by asking you, Professor, you are here in India at a time when Britain, of course, is trying to negotiate a deal. Whether there's going to be a deal or no deal, that remains to be seen. I want to understand from you, what are the people feeling like in Britain at this point in time? What is it that you're picking up from Britain as well as from India, since you're traveling between the two countries? What is the feeling like?
So Brexit's very controversial in the United Kingdom. 52% voted to leave the European Union and 48% voted to remain. That was in June 2016. I think 2 years after that, it's becoming much clearer what the implications of Brexit actually mean, both in terms of no deal, but also in terms of what the Prime Minister is offering in terms of a transition agreement for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. The country is as divided now as it was in 2016, with about half of the population wanting to leave the European Union to chart a very different sort of economic and political future, and about half the country deeply committed to retaining very strong links, cultural, economic, and educational links with the European Union 27.
Right. And let me get in Vanessa at this point in time. Vanessa, as far as the educational system in Britain is concerned, a lot of Indians today, Indian students, of course, are jittery. They're not very sure of what the future is going to be like in the UK. What would you tell those Indian students who are looking to, get enrolled into the UK universities?
So I think it's absolutely understandable. The future's quite unclear for all of us, and obviously our Indian students are picking up on that. But I think what I would say is there is, and has always been, a very deep emotional attachment between the two countries. I understand that the education choice people make is, for a lot of people, the biggest single investment they're ever going to make in their future, and people need to think very, very sensibly and clearly and be informed about their options. I think we would all have a view that the UK higher education sector stands up to and is still outstanding and provides one of the best world-leading educations, and that should be at the forefront of people's minds when they're making that choice, but it has to be the right choice for them. I would obviously say I think the University of Essex has actually been an outlier. We are one of the most international universities in the world. We consistently come up, both in terms of our student population and our faculty, as we have staff and students from over 140 different countries, and the quality of that global student experience people experience at the university is incredible.
All right. Also, let's get in a quick word from Jagdish at this point in time. So I want to understand from you, if the UK leaves the EU, what sort of impact are we going to see in India, and also the bilateral ties between India and the UK? What sort of changes will come into fore? And is that something that India is bracing for at this point?
No, looking at the present trade positions, we depend on the UK to the extent of around 3.4% of our total exports. On the other hand, if you look at the European Union as a market, We depend on European Union as a whole to more than 16%, I think 16.4 or 5% of them. This is a major, the market actually after the US and now of course the Middle East and the China also been contributing. So from that point of view, certainly it is a loss. But last year after this process started, the Prime Minister May made a statement that she would prefer a bilateral negotiations with the countries, and in that context she specifically mentioned India. She would like to have the bilateral agreements in the emerging countries, especially the India she mentioned. So from that point of view, it is new opportunities for India. If you improve the tie-up with the UK, definitely it is, I mean, better opportunities as far as the India is concerned. And I will also look from another angle. That is, when you look from the bilateral trading system, say within the WTO, the earlier about 7-10 years back, the bilateral trading agreement was basically loaded in favor of the OECD country because they were the one who are responsible for imposing the agenda, that is along with the US. But it is only the later after the entry of the China, along with India and other BRIC countries, we started renegotiating and put across our viewpoint of view. Now from that point of view, since European Union as a bloc of 28 countries, they were in a position to have their say within the WTO. Now with the break in the European Union, as an Indian I feel happy because our negotiating power will certainly improve.
Right. Okay, let me quickly get in a word from Professor here. Do you, Anthony, do you agree that it was the fear of the foreigners, fear of the losses in jobs, and it was basically the protectionist policy of the existing government that led to Brexit? It's because of the fear of the people?
I have a different reading of the situation. A majority voted to leave the European Union. The question on the ballot paper was, do we want to stay or do we want to leave the European Union? And 51% said they wanted to leave. There was a really widespread set of reasons for why people voted to leave, not one single reason. I think issues around immigration were a factor. I think disillusionment with the European Union and a sense of what it offered the United Kingdom, more constraints than opportunities was another factor. I think the opportunity some saw to allow the United Kingdom to negotiate its own free trade deals around the world rather than be limited by the European Union was a factor. And I think disillusionment with the democratic deficit in the European Union, the way in which decision-making was made and its legitimacy and accountability. So many, many different factors. What I think is become very clear is that whilst a majority wanted to leave the European Union, the exact nature of the future relationship both with the European Union 27 and the rest of the world is very, very unclear, and that's what Theresa May's government is wrestling with. So what does the future look like after we leave the European Union?
That remains unclear, obviously, till the voting completes, and obviously there's a trade deal that the UK is able to negotiate. I want to get in Naveen on the broadcast at this point. Naveen, a lot of students, I'm sure, are coming to you, those who want to go to the UK, want to know what the future looks like. Can they still get a job? Will they not get a job? What are you telling the people who are coming to you, the students and parents who are coming to you?
Look, there's more than 300,000 students who walk through our doors in a year, given year inquiring and seeking advice. There are different motivations that drive students. A very large segment of the motivation comes from the middle class, upper middle class families to go there, get an education, but also then get jobs and possibly opportunities to migrate. Now, Britain had a wonderful post-study work visa program. At the time, at the peak, I seem to recall that there were almost 54,000, 55,000 Indian students going annually. For reasons that Anthony has enumerated just now, I mean, for a variety of factors. There was a public emotion coming up which was against this very high intake of foreigners. Chinese outstripped Indian students also, and we were probably the second largest suppliers. But with the removal of the post-study work, that segment of student whose motivation was to find jobs and work and migration, possible migration, dropped, and the numbers dropped from 54,000 to 8,000, 8,500 1 year. Now it's grown back to about 14,000 over the last 3-4 years. So it's a different motivations, but people who are going to the United Kingdom are going there. There's no, in most cases now, no financial issue, so they are from the upper socioeconomic strata. Second, they're looking for obviously a very, very good education, and as we all know, Britain has some of the oldest and best universities that led the world in education. In fact, my wife Natasha Chopra is a graduate of Essex. she's an alumni from there in economics, for that matter. And I was telling her she should have been here today instead of myself. And so it's the dynamic within Britain and indeed most Western countries for the last decade or so stems around the fact that there's been progressive cutting of budgets by governments to the publicly funded or government funded universities. And this budget, this gap has been, fortunately for them, the East opened up, China started opening up, India opened up, and the need for the demand-supply gap for good, great education in our country, you're well aware of. Back when we started, it was chronic. Now there are lots of private universities, but this is what fueled the full international fee-paying student phenomena, and many universities, as a consequence, achieved two things. One, a diversity of cohort, which was very important for them, and two, a very high income flow into the university system. From the Indian student point of view, I mean, I've lived in the States, Canada, UK, New Zealand, Australia is also a home for me. So I mean, I've kind of been a intense student of these things. But what I find is that there's a key difference between the United States and the United Kingdom. Indians, or almost anybody who goes to the United States, becomes more American than Americans within a matter of months. They'll put on an American accent. Oh man, how are you doing? Whereas in Britain, people who go in Britain and live there or study there tend to maintain their culture and retain their culture. So you end up meeting a cultural diversity on campus, which is unbelievable. Okay. And every community almost, or nationality, is represented in large enough numbers for it to be visible. So of course the local Brits are there, including the Scots and the Irish and so on. But then you have Europeans, you have Africans, you have South Americans, you have Indians, you have Chinese. I mean, that kind of diversity is phenomenal from the perspective of the opportunity that you have to expand and extend your own personality and understand how people think from different parts of the world and how they interact. And that's, I think, to my mind, critical in the world that we've stepped into.
Right. We will come back on that and we'll discuss, of course, the ramification on the educational institutions going forward. But time now for a quick commercial break. We'll be back in just a bit. Welcome back. We have a power-packed panel here and we are discussing Brexit and the ramifications of Brexit as far as education in the UK is concerned. And let me go back to Professor here. And, before we went on break, sir, we were discussing the ramifications, of course, in the educational sector. I want to understand from you, from the point of tuition fees, from the point of visas, from the point of, admissions into the UK universities, what are the changes that we expect after the Brexit happens, if at all?
So I know there's a lot of confusion around Brexit, whether it will happen or whether it won't happen. I think there are a lot of opportunities for international students to come to the UK and benefit from the type of education that we offer. The quality of the education, as Vanessa said, is some of the best in the world. We're interested not just in teaching students, but educating students. The activity that takes place outside the classroom and the laboratory, the extracurricular activities, the sports club societies are just as important as what goes on in the seminar room and the laboratory. And I think that quality will really stand out. The United Kingdom, if it's going to deliver on being a global player, is going to have to attract more international students. And I think that's good for India. I think it's good to think about the opportunities that are going to present themselves around the fact there is now no limit on the ability of UK universities to recruit international students. There's been a revision to the visa policy by the British government to make it easier for students to get student visas to study in the UK. 94% of all student applications from India are now approved. That's fantastic. And the government is trialling a pilot of which the University of Essex is a part to allow students to stay on after a period of study of up to 6 months. And we've been very keen to encourage the government to roll out that post-study work visa policy to all universities, and indeed to try and extend it from up to 6 months to up to 2 years. We think that's going to make a very attractive proposition to Indian students.
Vanessa, do you think that happening? I mean, that's something that we've been talking about for a while. When I went there as a student, that's something even I, struggled with. We all want to work in the country we're studying, at least for a year or so. Is that something you see happening in the near future with the kind of policies that we see being rolled out in the UK? Do you think the government will finally concede to it?
I think the government will have to in one way or another, whether it's a public statement, and I think what we've seen is a gradual change, and there are absolutely concessions coming through. The pilot has been a core part of that. The interesting thing for me is obviously there was a huge interest in this in India for reasons we all understand, but I talked to lots and lots of applicants, to lots of Indian students, and one of the really interesting things for me was actually it wasn't even necessarily that by default everyone was expecting to stay. The kind of students we're talking to are people who see themselves as global citizens, and actually they want that option. And the irony was actually nearly all of them would have qualified for visas anyway, but what we did, or what the British government did, was shut that down very publicly, and in India in particular that was seen as a really negative stance, and Naveen very clearly outlined the impact it had on us. And we all felt that, and I think we all felt a loss of our Indian student populations at our universities, and we don't want to shut down the doors. We want these people to come and study in the UK. And one of the things that we absolutely feel is the huge benefit that diversity of student population, and particularly our Indian students, have to host universities. These are a core part of making that global community, and our British students need to be sitting next to Indian students in lecture theatres as well. It's absolutely central.
And it's not just students who are going to be thoughtful and mindful before going to the UK. I also want to understand from you, Jagdish, with respect to a lot of firms who are currently operating in the UK after Brexit, because we are one of the main FDI sources for the UK. Are the companies that operate in the UK will be mindful before employing students from India or students from anywhere else in the world, especially from the Europe? Is there going to be a change as far as ties between India and the UK is concerned with respect to FDI?
So anyway, the government has been liberalizing the foreign investment policy, both in the case of FDI as well as the foreign institutional investment. And in certain areas like infrastructure, so we are been allowing 100% participation. And even in the case of insurance or the defense, we are liberalized recently. Earlier there was a restriction to below 26%. Now it has been liberalized in more than 51%, and even thinking of raising it to 74%. So by and large, our approach towards the foreign direct investment is quite liberal. And of course, at the practical level, there was some problem in attracting the foreign investment, mainly because, we have been allowing the entry, like the entry has been made free right from 1991, but the exit was not free, because once the investment comes, he cannot get out unless following through the different process which it used to take place number of years. For that, we are required to amend the Labour Act, specifically Industrial Dispute Act 1947, under which the loss-making unit cannot fold up without the permission of the concerned state government, which doesn't come because of the political reasons. But now the incumbent government very cleverly facilitated this exit route. So probably the trade unions have not realized that. That is why, I mean, if in the ease of ranking, the India jumped by more than 20 points during this 1 year itself, the major contribution is because of this bankruptcy code. So with this, I am sure that the foreign investors, whether it is from UK or some other country, they'll definitely would love to come to India.
Right, so India continues to be an open market as of today. I want to come to you, Naveen, and I want to understand from you, what are the funding opportunities available to students from India who want to go to the UK? Scholarships, fundings, fellowships. Will there be any change going forward after the Brexit?
I don't really think there'll be any real substantial change in the negative, if that's what you're looking for. And as far as funding options is concerned for India, there's always the banking system is giving education loans, as you know. But for us Indians have the alternative channels, which are usually built around a very strong network of relatives, sometimes family friends, who will also help out if required with loans or soft loans to their students. Insofar as scholarships is concerned, British universities do have some scholarships, and I'm sure, Anthony, you can talk about some of your scholarships at Essex. And there are the Chevening scholarships, which are also an annual feature. Various university departments come up with scholarships. So yes, for bright students there are scholarship opportunities, but it's tough. It's not something that students can't sort of think that, I mean, if I'm just on the basis of the fact that, because there are limitations. And the competition is fierce. For every seat that a British university has, the number of applicants is fairly large, and they are global. They're coming in from all over. And imagine what's happening here in Delhi University. How hard you have to fight to get into Delhi University.
So we're running short of time. Let me take the last question from Professor. Professor, going forward, will there be stricter norms to take in international students from India? Will the norms be more stricter now after the Brexit, or will it continue to be the way it is today?
So international students are worth about £20 billion a year to the British economy. That's just the economic impact. Vanessa's talked about the cultural impact, the benefit on the quality of education. I think the British government is going to allow UK universities to recruit even more talented students from around the world. And I think that's going to create lots of exciting opportunities, particularly in India, where we know there's a very strong demand for a high-quality British education.
Right. Professor Jagdish, Vanessa and Naveen, thank you very much for joining us on this broadcast. I think that's all we have. We'll wrap up this show. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.